Hello dear viewer, thanks for viewing these latest Selenium interview questions and answers with code examples. I have prepared 100 plus questions and answers. These focus on Selenium 4 with Java. You will learn many new things in this information packed video. There are questions on Selenium, Locators, iFrames, Shadow DOM, Waits, also latest Selenium IDE, Selenium Grid, and many other topics. Make sure that you don't miss any questions, otherwise there will be gaps in your knowledge. I have grouped these questions into chapters so that next time you can jump directly to a group of questions. In Selenium interview questions and answers, what is Selenium? It is a suite of tools for automating web browsers to automate the interactions and verify the expected behavior. What are the Selenium components? There are three components: Selenium IDE, WebDriver, and Selenium Grid. What is Selenium IDE? It is a browser extension or add-on available for Chrome, Firefox, and Edge to record scripts, which can be run on any browser or Selenium Grid. Selenium IDE is basically used for bug reproduction scripts and website exploration. How does Selenium WebDriver work? Is one of the important questions of Selenium interview questions. Selenium WebDriver interacts with a web browser or a remote web server. It sends commands to a browser and retrieves the results. What is the latest version of Selenium WebDriver? Version 4. In Selenium WebDriver 4, find elements, methods, capabilities, and actions class are different from Selenium version 3. What is Selenium Grid? It is a tool to run Selenium tests on multiple machines simultaneously, reducing the time to test the web application on multiple browsers or operating systems. What are the Selenium advantages? It is open source and free to use. It supports multiple programming languages, for example Java, Python, C#, and multiple browsers, for example Chrome and Firefox. And each of the browsers has its own driver. What are the limitations of Selenium? There is no support for testing desktop applications. There is limited support for testing mobile applications, and there are no inbuilt reporting features. Continuing with automation testing interview questions and answers. Next question in Selenium Java interview questions is how to get the correct browser driver for a Selenium WebDriver session in Java. Now first we have to download the correct browser driver, or we can use WebDriver Manager. Now WebDriver Manager, we have to import it, and then for example if we want Chrome driver, WebDriver Manager.ChromeDriver.setup. Next in Selenium Java interview questions, how to create a Selenium WebDriver session in Java. We can use the WebDriver interface, and this is a very common statement in any Selenium WebDriver test. WebDriver driver is equal to new Chrome driver. How to create a local Selenium WebDriver in Java? Same command, but we have to give the path to the driver executable. So system.set property, and we have to give it for Chrome driver and then give the path to Chrome driver. Then WebDriver driver is equal to new Chrome driver. How to create a remote Selenium WebDriver in Java? By using remote WebDriver and URL classes. For example, WebDriver driver is equal to new remote WebDriver and new URL. Give the URL here and with desired capabilities .chrome. In Selenium Java, browser navigation can be done by which commands? This is one of the basic Selenium with Java interview questions. There are multiple commands. The common one is driver.get. Alternately, we can use driver.navigate.to, and there is the command to go back, forward, and also to refresh the web page. How to maximize the browser window? driver.manage.window.maximize. How to get the web page title and the URL in the address bar of the browser? driver.getTitle. This getTitle command gives the web page title, and getCurrent URL gives the URL in the address bar. How to verify the expected result in Selenium? We can use JUnit, for example, assert true, and give that the title with driver.getTitle contains some search term. Now, Selenium Java interview questions for 2 years experience. What are the different located strategies in Selenium WebDriver with Java? WebDriver can find element by ID, by name, by class name, by tag name, by link text, by partial link text, by CSS selector, or by XPath. Why are relative XPaths preferred instead of absolute XPaths? Relative XPaths are more stable than absolute XPaths because absolute XPaths fail if any part of the path changes even slightly. What is invalid selector exception in Selenium WebDriver with Java? It is thrown when an invalid selector is used to locate the element, and to fix this issue we have to check the selector. What is Selectors Hub? It is a free tool that generates the correct locator on inspecting an element, and like Selenium IDE, it's a browser extension. What are relative locators in Selenium 4? Relative locators are a new feature. They identify the location which can be above, below, to the left of, to right of, or near. Near meaning less than 50 pixels away from another web element with a simpler locator. So if the locator is very complex, we can use the relative locator, and then we can get a web element with a simple locator and use the relative locator alongside that. For example, let us say that submit button has a very complex locator, but there is another web element who has a simple ID. We can use that locator to find that element, and we can mention that our button is below that other web element with the simple locator. How do you chain relative locators in Selenium 4? Chaining relative locators means using multiple relative locators. So for example, we can say that login locator is relative locator and its tag name is button. So it's a login button, and it is below another web element whose ID is password, and to the right of another web element whose ID is cancel. How do you interact with an input box in Selenium WebDriver with Java? Input box is very simple. Just give web element I is equal to driver.findElement, and we can use the ID. Now with input box, it is a editable web element, so we can use the send keys method, the send keys some value, and we can use the keys class to give keys.enter to press enter. How do you clear an input box in Selenium WebDriver with Java? By using the clear method. So same command and the web element name.clear. What is the difference between WebDriver close and quit methods? The close method closes the main browser window, but the quit method, it is the recommended method, closes all the browser windows and deletes the session. Now Java interview questions for Selenium testers. How to write the if statement in Java? In Java the syntax is if followed by a condition in brackets, then there is the if block. This is the code block to run if the condition is true. Else, the else block. This is the code block to run if the condition is false. There is another way to write the if statement. We can write variable is equal to condition in brackets question mark. If the condition is true, then this expression true will be evaluated. If the condition is false, the expression false will be evaluated. How to execute some JavaScript in Selenium with Java? We can import JavaScript executor, and initialize it, then just give that variable name dot execute script. For example, this window dot open brackets script is going to open a blank tab in the browser. How do you interact with a link in Selenium WebDriver with Java? Driver dot find element by dot link text and give the complete link text here, then that web element dot click. But what if the link text is long or it can change? So it is preferable to use a partial link text with the stable part of the link text. So here we can use WebDriver wait, and this WebDriver wait is going to wait for a maximum of 30 seconds, and it is going to wait for the link, that element, to be clickable. And the locator, we can use partial link text and give the stable part of the link text and then click it. Selenium interview questions and answers for experienced. Which element will WebDriver find if there are multiple matching elements for the locator? As in, web element A is equal to driver.find element by class name, and the class name is answer. So WebDriver is going to find the first matching web element in the DOM, which is the document object model. But how to find the second or another element instead of the first element? We can do this by limiting the scope of finding the web element. So for example, web element question 2, and we find this web element. Now web element A is, we are not searching for the whole DOM but only within question 2. So question 2 dot find element, and then we can give the locator. But how to find the second element? Using a single WebDriver command, because earlier we used two WebDriver commands. We can find it using a single WebDriver command by using CSS selector or XPath. So for example, web element A is driver.find element by CSS selector, and we can give the hash, and after that we can give the ID, and after dot we can give the class name. Which WebDriver command works on any web element? The click command, it clicks the web element in the middle of that element. How to get the text shown in the browser by an element? By using the get text method. For example, string t is equal to driver.find element, and find it by using the CSS selector. After finding the element, call dot get text on it to get the text. How to get some attributes value of a web element? By using the get attribute method. For example, string answer is equal to driver.find element, and find that element and get attribute, and then we have to give that value. When invoked on a web element, what does a submit method do? It is used to submit a form, and it works on any web element. But in Selenium 4, it is recommended to click the specific form submission button. How do you handle drop-downs? By using select class. For example, web element drop-down is equal to driver.find element. First of all, find that element, then give select s by using the select class is equal to new select, and give this web element. Then once we have the drop down, we can use select by visible text and select an option. How do you know if a drop down is multi-select drop down? We can look in the HTML. The select tag contains multiple attribute. In Selenium, we can call isMultiple method, and it will return true if it is a multi-select drop down. Which method works for the multi-select drop down but not for the single select drop down? Out of get options, get first selected option, deselect by visible text. So get options and get first selected options work for both single select and multi-select drop down, but deselect by visible text works only for the multi-select drop down. How do you verify the state? For example, visible or enabled of a web element. There is displayed or is enabled methods, and is selected method is used to verify whether a checkbox, radio button and so on is selected. How do you handle alerts by using the alert class. For example, alert A is equal to driver.switch2.alert, and then we can accept it, meaning press the OK button on the alert. What is no alert present exception? It is thrown when there is no alert present on the page. To fix this, we have to verify that an alert is actually present before interacting with it. How do you handle confirmations? Again, we can use the alert class, and the difference between alert and confirmation is that confirmation may be accepted, meaning the OK button is pressed, or it can be dismissed, meaning the cancel button is pressed. For example, alert C is equal to driver.switch2.alert, same command as before, and C.dismiss, meaning press the cancel button on this confirmation. How can WebDriver handle the JavaScript pop-up with two buttons? Now there are two types of pop-ups with two buttons. These are confirmation and prompt alert, and both have accept for OK and dismiss for cancel methods. But additionally, prompt has send keys where we can give some text input. How do you handle frames in Selenium? iFrames can have elements from any domain. So we can switch to iFrame by giving the command switch to driver.switch2.frame and give the frame name. What is an element not found exception in Selenium with Java? It is a very common exception. It can occur when the web element is not present on the web page. For example, the DOM has not loaded fully, or the element is not interactable, or it is within an iframe, so we have not switched to that iframe, but we are searching in the DOM only, or it's in Shadow DOM, or the element's locator has changed. So we have to isolate what problem it is and then fix that issue. How do you interact with an element in an iframe? So first we have to driver.switch to that frame and then find that web element, driver.find element, and give the locator, and then we can interact with that web element. In Selenium with Java, how can you switch to an iframe with duplicate ID and name? Now the problem is that driver.switch2.frame switches to the first iframe with the duplicate ID or name. So instead of that, we can use driver.find element to find that iframe as a web element and then switch to it, or we can use the frame index to switch to it. In Selenium with Java, what is no such frame exception? It is thrown when the frame you are trying to switch to is not present on the page. So we have to verify that the frame is present on the page. How to print the data of all the iframes on a web page? So we can use a Java for each loop. So for web element F in driver.find elements, so plural, by.tagname iframe, and we can construct a string, for example frame data, and use the get attribute method to get the ID, name, and source, and then print that string variable. What is a window handle? It is a unique alphanumeric string of every window. The window handle is generated and controlled by the browser for a single session. How do you handle windows in Selenium Java? For example, we can give a string variable, string main window is driver.getWindowHandle, and then use the Java for each loop for string handle in driver.getWindowHandles. If not main window.content equals handle, then we can switch to that particular window. How do you know how many windows or tabs are open at a given time in Selenium testing? We can use driver.getWindowHandles.size. This will give us. What is implicit wait in Selenium WebDriver with Java? WebDriver waits for a duration before it finds any element, and it can be implemented like driver.manage.timeouts.implicitly wait, and duration of seconds 15. So it's going to wait for 15 seconds before it finds any element. How do you use explicit wait in Selenium WebDriver with Java? We have to use WebDriver wait and expected conditions. For example, WebDriver wait w variable is equal to new WebDriver wait, and we have to give a reference to driver and give the duration. and then we can find the web element by giving WebDriver wait.until, and our expected conditions is that visibility of element located, and then give the locator. Now the recommendation is that implicit wait and explicit wait should not be used together. So either you should use implicit wait or just use explicit wait. Explicit wait is better because it focuses on a single web element. What are the possible expected conditions in Selenium WebDriver with Java? There are many expected conditions. For example, alert is present, element to be clickable, frame to be available and switch to it, text to be present, title contains, and visibility of element located. What is timeout exception? It is thrown when an operation takes longer than the specified timeout period. And to fix this issue, we have to try increasing the timeout period. How do you use fluent wait in Selenium WebDriver? Fluent wait is a new feature and it has a timeout and polling frequency. Wait WebDriver wait is equal to new fluent wait, and here we can give timeout, for example 10 seconds, and it is going to check polling every 1 second, and it ignores no such element exception. How do you perform a file upload in Selenium WebDriver with Java? The type of the input element has to be file. So first driver.find element, and then with that web element dot send keys, and give the path to our file. What are browser options in Selenium WebDriver with Java? These are the capabilities shared by all browsers. For example, browser name, browser version, and page load strategy, which can be normal, this is the default, or it can be eager, which is even faster, or none, which is the fastest. By default, we are going to use the normal page load strategy, which allows the DOM to complete loading. How do you use Chrome specific functionality in Selenium WebDriver with Java? By using Chrome options class. For example, Chrome options is equal to new Chrome options, and with this options dot add arguments incognito, and then open WebDriver with WebDriver driver is equal to new Chrome driver, and give this options variable. How do you use edge specific functionality in Selenium WebDriver with Java? By using edge options class. Edge options is equal to new edge options, and options dot set page load strategy dot eager, which is a faster strategy, and WebDriver driver is equal to new edge driver, and give the options variable. How do you use Firefox specific functionality in Selenium WebDriver with Java? First, in Firefox, we have to use the latest version of Gecko driver, and then we can use Firefox options class. Firefox options is equal to new Firefox options, WebDriver driver is equal to new Firefox driver, and give this options variable. How do you use Internet Explorer specific functionality? First of all, standalone Internet Explorer is not supported by Selenium WebDriver now, but it can run Microsoft Edge browser in Internet Explorer compatibility mode if you have very old code. Write the code to print all links on a web page. So we can use the for each loop in Java for web element link in driver.find elements by tag name A, and just print out that for each variable link.get text and link.get attribute href. So this is the URL. What functionality does WebDriver support on browser cookies? Add, get a cookie, delete an individual cookie, or get all cookies and delete all cookies. How can you see a cookies data in Selenium WebDriver with Java? We can give driver.manage.getCookie named for an individual cookie and driver.manage.getCookies for all the cookies. Now we are continuing with Selenium Java interview questions for 5 years experience. How do you add a cookie in Selenium WebDriver with Java? Driver.manage.addCookie, and give a new cookie, and every cookie has a key and a value. Then cookie C is equal to driver.manage.getCookie named, and we have to give the key. that we gave above, and then we can print that cookie using Java system.out.println. How do you get the color of a web element in Selenium WebDriver with Java? There is the method get CSS value. For example, color b1 color, and we can give driver.findElement.get CSS value and give color, and same get CSS value background color. How do you handle an SVG web element in Selenium WebDriver with Java? SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics format. It doesn't support standard XPath locator, but we can give driver.findElement by.css selector, and we can give SVG the complete CSS selector, and then we can interact with it. Which method in Actions API executes the keyboard commands key down, key up, send keys, or perform? So after all the commands in Actions API, we have to call the perform command. It executes the one or more previous commands. What is actions chaining in Actions API? It just means putting multiple actions one after another. For example, we initialize the actions object, actions A is equal to new actions driver. Here we are trying to copy some text from one web element to another. A dot key down, source box keys dot control. So with the control key pressed, send keys A. So it is going to press control A, then control C, then key up. So control key is released, and after all these commands dot perform. So it is going to basically copy that text into the clipboard. Then similarly, then send keys control V, and then release the control key dot perform. So this is a couple of examples of actions chaining. How do you interact with the web element in the Shadow DOM? For open Shadow DOM, we can give, first of all, find out the Shadow DOM. Web element shadow is equal to driver.findElement, and give the CSS selector. Then we can find the web element within the Shadow DOM, shadow.findElement, and give the CSS selector, and then interact with it. How do you interact with the web element in the closed Shadow DOM? With closed Shadow DOM, we can interact with the web element by using JavaScript. So for example, web element shadow is, first of all, we can execute script and return arguments, shadow root, etc. And then once we have that Shadow DOM, then we can call find element on that Shadow DOM and give the CSS selector and then interact with that web element. How do you interact with the web element in a nested Shadow DOM? We have to use find element or execute script multiple times. For example, Shadow DOM 1, we can do it by finding that element, then Shadow DOM 2, execute script, and then Shadow DOM 3, and then find that, and that web element is lying within Shadow DOM 3, and then we can interact with it. How do you use the Actions API in Selenium WebDriver with Java? By using the Actions class, like I showed you. Actions A is equal to new actions driver, and then find an element, and then A dot move to element dot click dot perform. So this is going to move the mouse pointer to that element. What is stale element reference exception? So now we are looking at Selenium Java interview questions and answers for experienced. A stale element reference exception is thrown when the element has been modified or removed from the page after it was previously located. So the element needs to be relocated, or it is possible that the element is no longer attached to the DOM, and we can call the refresh method to refresh the web page and again locate that element. How to perform mouse hover in Selenium WebDriver? By using Actions API. For example, web element menu 1, driver.findElement by the locator, and then move to element. And we always have to call the perform method at the end when using Actions API. Does WebDriver support mouse wheel operation by the user? Yes. Actions API has scroll to element, scroll by amount, etc. methods, but they are supported only in Chromium browsers, meaning Chrome, Edge, etc. What is takes screenshot in Selenium Java? It is an interface that provides WebDriver get screenshot as method. What is WebDriver exception? It is thrown when there is an issue with WebDriver itself, for example connection issue or issue with the browser. So to fix the issue, we can restart WebDriver or we can check for updates to the Selenium WebDriver. How can you print the stack trace of the exception? We can print all the data by printing the exception object using Java system.out.println exception. Now let us continue with Automation Engineer interview questions and answers. How can you prevent threading defects in your Selenium Java code? Thread guard is available, which ensures that the same thread that created the driver can only call it, else it throws a thread safety exception. For example, we can use private WebDriver driver is equal to threadguard.protect new Chrome driver. Now coming to Selenium Grid, what is the architecture of Selenium Grid? Selenium Grid has one hub which is central and one or more nodes, and the nodes actually run the tests. The hub commands nodes based on test capabilities it needs and the nodes availability. What are the Selenium Grid features? Support for running tests on remote machines, which can be on premises or in the cloud, running tests on different browser and operating system combinations, and scale the number of nodes up or down depending on the load, and a proxy server to route traffic to the nodes. How do you scale the number of nodes in Selenium Grid? To add a node, we can start a new node with the desired capabilities and specify the URL of the hub. And to remove a node, we can stop the node process. Or you can use virtualization tools like Docker. How to use Selenium Grid in Selenium WebDriver with Java? We have to use the remote WebDriver class and specify what is the URL of the Selenium Grid hub. How do you configure the Selenium Grid hub? Specify the following options in the configuration file. What is the port number, and what is the host name or IP address, and what is the new session wait timeout. How do you configure the Selenium Grid node? Specify the options in the configuration file. The port number, the host name or IP address, the maximum number of sessions that can be created on the node, and the capabilities that the node supports, meaning the browser, operating system, etc. How do you use Selenium Grid to run tests on different browser and operating system combinations? To use the desired capabilities before creating a new session. For example, desired capabilities variable is equal to desired capabilities.chrome, capabilities.setPlatform, Windows, and WebDriver driver is equal to new remote driver, and give the URL and the capabilities variable. Now page object model. What are the advantages of using page object model or POM? It reduces code duplicity to find the web elements of the same web page again and again and interact with them. Maintainability, because if the UI changes, the update needs to be done in a single place in the specific page object. And readability, because the web page specific code, locators, etc. and test code are separate. What is a page object in page object model or POM? It is a class that represents a single web page. It should have the locators of the web page but no assertions. Assertions should be in the test code. Page factory pattern makes it simpler to create page objects. In page object model, how can you verify that the correct web page has loaded? The correct web page and any critical web elements can be verified in the page object constructor methods. What is data parameterization? It means using variable test data, and that test data can be in CSV file, Excel file or database instead of static test data which doesn't change. For example, hard-coded data in scripts. Name a few frameworks used in Selenium with Java. We have test frameworks, for example JUnit and TestNG, natural language frameworks, for example Cucumber, and test automation frameworks, for example Maxstaff Cloud, that has logging, read Excel, features, etc. What are annotations in JUnit? Annotations are put before the Java method definitions. For example, before class annotation, after class, before, after, and for the test method we have the @test annotation, repeated tests. In JUnit, what is the difference between before and before class? Before runs the method before each test method, and before class runs the method just once before all the test methods. What are the main tasks that you have to do in a Selenium Java project? First, test case and test data analysis and planning. Then Selenium framework identification and its configuration. Then you have to decide design pattern to use and implementation. For example, you can use page object model or data driven testing, etc. Then write the actual test automation with the operations and validations, logging, screenshots, implementation, and finally how to analyze the test results. Now some Selenium IDE questions. In Selenium IDE, what is base URL? Base URL, or the link of the application under test, and it is shared in all the tests of the project in Selenium IDE. How can you run the Selenium IDE test in a different browser? By using Selenium IDE command line runner. How does the if command work in Selenium IDE? Selenium IDE has if, else if, else, end command, and it has a JavaScript expression after if. So if that expression evaluates to true, it runs the command until else if. How do you implement loops in Selenium IDE? By using the commands times for fixed number of times, and there is do, repeat, while, and for each loops. How do you convert Selenium IDE tests to Selenium WebDriver code? We can export to Java and JUnit, or JavaScript Mocha, Python PyTest, or C# NUnit. What is Selenium RC? Selenium RC is the original Selenium one. It has two components, Selenium server and client libraries. Selenium RC is still available, but it is not supported anymore. What is Selenium 2? Selenium 1 was rewritten with the code of WebDriver. Now WebDriver is easier and more object oriented than Selenium RC. With Selenium 2, you can use WebDriver API calls and also use Selenium RC. What is Selenium 3? Selenium 3 has only WebDriver but not Selenium RC. And now Selenium 4 is available, which follows the W3C WebDriver specifications. That's all in this latest Selenium interview questions and answers. I hope you liked this video. Please encourage me by putting a like and subscribe to the Software and Testing Training channel, and also share this video if possible. Thank you.